complete 93 slides. So I need everybody's attention on the board real quickly. If you have any questions, supposed to save them for later because Ron's going to answer those on the next presentation. My name's Richard Spurlock. I'm the principal and senior enterprise architect at Starfire Technologies. We focus on storage and storage management. This is the back end and focus of what I do on a daily basis. So what I'm here today is to talk about some of the customer experiences, perspectives, and if you will, challenges and solutions around some deployments. We'll start off with what we do is we deliver storage management solutions, real small customers. I've got a small customer that literally has 3 servers that we backed up, and they also backed up 27 workstations. Ooh, it was a complex environment, all the way through very large enterprise environments. We have fundamentally designed, especially with the 6X time frame, we'll talk about it in a little bit of detail, but an appliance model to our TSM deployments. We focus on service recovery and service continuity. We'll touch on that a little more. The foundation of what we do is mentor. We teach our customers what we do, how we do it, and how to do it themselves. We're very focused in the Tivoli storage space. TSM, TPC, and SVC is our backyard. Thoroughly appreciate the products from IBM. As Woj was saying earlier, his job is to make us successful. Steve and team and Ord and so on have made us very successful with the TSM product development. We work in a number of different industries, but specifically healthcare, finance, and so on. We work in these spaces to deliver storage management. Let's crush these costs, shall we? And then our mission is transforming your guys' operations from operate to innovate. Let's stop spending so much time on just trying to get backups done. Let's start focusing on how we can deliver better services in the storage space to our end users and our customers. Okay, so V6. We've been working with TSM for 15 plus years. Back in the ADSM days through TSM, Tivoli acquisition, the changes, V5, V6 most recently, and it's been a game changer for us, being able to address not only the data explosion, the amount of data that's being ingested, and the increased retention and data management requirements, but also in the competitive landscape. If a customer has multiple backup solutions, and we'll talk about this on a couple of the scenarios, if a customer has multiple backup solutions, TSM is the one product where we can go in and say, we're going to give you guys an enterprise-wide service continuity solution. We win. If that's the discussion at the customer location, we'll win. Okay? So our customer solutions, the key thing that we try and deliver for customers is leveraging the breadth and depth of TSM, because there's a lot of things in the portfolio. I'll ask you guys about versions here in a moment, but what we find is that a lot of customers have deployed TSM, but not really embraced all the features, functions, and capabilities across the product portfolio. We have a 4-tier appliance model that we use with frequency. There are always exceptions. Your TSM environment's different from yours, but we have 4 TSM appliances. The first is a micro, which is a pure virtual machine, and these are configurations that we deploy to customers, small, medium, and large. We'll talk about those in a couple of the scenarios. Automation is the key to us. Client installation, walk up to a new machine or a machine that has the old client installed for SQL TDP or for the file BA client, install, space, the password for the node, and it's done. Migrate all the settings, upgrade it, tear down the services, recreate services, and so on and so on. Discrete DRM is something that we hit a lot. How many environments today are tape or include tape? Yeah. So for one of the things that we hit specifically for a very large customer in 2005 is the managing that consistent state of what I have in the library, what TSM library managers know about, and what's off-site. And DDRM is our process where we interrogate what's off-site, we interrogate what's in the libraries and what's in the TSM instances, and we produce differential states every day for you guys, so you know you don't lose tape. So on. And then the key thing that we've been doing since 2009 with TSM 6.1 and on is adopting disk in a very serious way for customers. Not only new disks capacity, but also leveraging existing disks that the customer already has on investment, allowing them to transition existing disk to the TSM landscapes and then invest in better performing, better fitting, better function disk for production. Now to do this, fundamentally, we had to change the design on how we built and deployed TSM servers. As Chris said earlier, the TSM 6 landscape is significantly different, so we'll touch on those things here in 2 slides. Next one is IBM's been making the right moves in 2011. This is a hats off to the IBM Tivoli Storage team, specifically the suite, the TSM Sweep for Unified Recovery. We are crushing the competition in this space. The pricing model is simplified over PDU, so the initial discussions with customers is much easier, as well as it's truly a value-centric metric for either new or existing customers. They're paying for what they're doing, and they understand and see that. So it's been very, very helpful for us and has invigorated the white space, the traditionally non-TSM customers. So it's been very invigorating for us since June of this year. And 6.3. 6.3 is just another solid step in the right direction from 6.1 server side, deduplication, 6.2 client side, 6.2.2 releasing and supporting HADR officially. 6.3 just builds on that. Multi-site TSM services is very helpful, very important to customers. Very large TSM environments are going to be enabled by this. VMware enhancements to integrate in and provide visibility and operational management for the VMware vCenter customers is huge. And encryption enhancements for clients helps us in a number of spaces. All right. So design considerations, building on what Chris was saying earlier. TSM, the fundamental characteristics of TSM 6 is more for less. I can do handle more workload, more data, in less time with less money. Okay? But to do that, I've got to have a balanced design that manages what the current state is and also allows us to grow. If we're going to change where we do dedupe, I've got to be able to have the capacity on the server side to manage this. If my client side in the VMware space is managing the compute load during deduplication, but all of a sudden I have a huge flux, I may have to push some of that workload to the TSM server. So we've got to be able to manage flexible, dynamic workloads. The 5X perspective, CPU capacities for 5X, CPU is pretty straightforward to measure and monitor. CPU now on the TSM 6 environments significantly higher, especially if we're doing deduplication and both on the server and the client side. Memory requirements significantly increased. To reinforce what Oren said earlier, if you guys are looking at memory and saying, hey, the requirements are 16 gigs to do deduplication, if you have a non-trivial workload, amount of data that's coming in every night, 16 gigs isn't going to even touch it. It's the cheapest place to make an investment that will significantly impact your environment in a positive way. And database capabilities. This has already been touched on in some good detail, but today the database is a different beast. IBM has done an extremely good job of making it a beast that's under the covers. There's a few times that we need to peek underneath that cover to tweak it and feed it properly, but otherwise, very, very good job of integrating DB2 and making that a embedded component of TSM. So for TSM 6, deduplication, the server and the client requirements are discernibly different to be able to handle the deduplication workload. Key thing to note here is that server-side deduplication, second to last in that sub-bullets, is tape with deduplicated data. The CPU load is noticeable, but it's primarily for database activity to be able to rehydrate the data. So if I bring in the data, dedupe it, but now I need to rehydrate this post-deduplication, the challenge that I have is that time and the I/O rates to be able to get that rehydration done. People miss that if I ingest a terabyte, and then I dedupe a terabyte, and then I rehydrate a terabyte, and then I write a terabyte, I've got to have system backends that are 5, 6, 7 terabytes in that workload window. It's a significant design issue that just needs to be made aware during the design of the TSM environment. If the chassis can handle it, great. I've got a customer that put in a system that maxed out at 32 gigs of RAM. That's not a good way to start. We need to be able to have these things scale up because your workload next year, next month, next week might change significantly. So we've got to be able to pour in more resources, and there's 3 really that drive, well 4 that really drive us, but 3 that I'm going to focus on. CPU, disk I/O, and memory. Okay. Daily processing enhancements for 6X, we need to fundamentally change the way we looked at daily processing. 5X was a different model relative to what we have the capabilities today. Steve and Oren and team have provided the ability to multi-threading, more capabilities in the same amount of time, but we also have to balance that again with the server capabilities. Disk subsystems. Well, if we're moving all this stuff from tape to disk in environments, so we're doing that a lot, especially since TSM embraces commodity disk. Good performing IBM disk coupled with the TSM server crushes the tape budget, or in some cases, even the requirement. But for us to do that, we've got to have the performance layout to be able to handle the ingestion rates, the dedupe rates, and the copy pooling rates. Okay? Fundamentally, a TSM server today, servicing the same workload relative to the TSM server of the previous generation, has a significantly higher server utilization. In the past, where we would stack a TSM 5X server and put a few other processes on the box, those processes in TSM 6 land are going to get starved to death, or have a negative impact on the TSM environment. The impact for us in the past 2.75 years of TSM 6X has been reducing costs with customers and improving the operations. We're able to get workloads done faster and more effectively for customers. So, I'm going to go through 5 scenarios. Each one of these has 7 slides apiece. Okay? Is anyone awake? I know it's after lunch. Thankfully, I wasn't after Woj, so we're in good shape there. All right, so let's drill through some of these. First one is a manufacturing customer. Distributed locations, customer out of the Netherlands that has locations all over the globe. Multiple primary data centers, as they refer to them. Many remote locations. Bandwidths vary all over the place. We have VMware infrastructure at most locations, but not all. A mix of platforms, applications, and systems. They had local restore requirements in the non-trivial remote locations and longer-term retention requirements. They wanted to eliminate tape in the primary data centers. They had a centralized TSM system, but they did not just use TSM. They used 3 other backup products at the same time in different data centers. So the intent was to not only upgrade our intent was not only to upgrade the TSM server, but also help them unify into one solution and go global with this. Okay? Components that we used, TSM 6.2 and Fastback. Fastback, to reinforce some of the previous speakers, Fastback as a client solution and a remote server solution is very effective. We leveraged deduplication both on the server and the client side. Server was to ingest some of the old platforms that did not support deduplication, as well as for some of the systems that we wanted high performance or high throughput from the backups. We used System X servers for the small and internal disk for the small appliances, System X servers with DS3500 for the data center, what we call the mid-tier appliance, and then we also use the virtual machine micro appliances for the specific locations. Okay. So what did we do? Working with this environment, we reduced the nightly backup windows by more than 50%. It was actually significantly shorter than that, but we just say 50% because it just doesn't sound like it was possible. We crushed the nightly data volumes that are being ingested by well over 70%. And we deduped over 85% of the data out. Okay? Anybody who says the TSM deduplication doesn't work probably hasn't turned it on, is my opinion on that. That or they're using encryption all over the place, which is another fun one. We were able to eliminate tape. That's something that there was just sort of a, hey, we'd like to be able to eliminate tape, but completely eliminated tape, including ingesting their historical data. Off-siting activities at the remote locations were completed still using the same bandwidth, so we didn't make a single dollar change in their bandwidth requirements for remote locations. Still provided the local restore services and then provided through the TSM infrastructure centralized management. Key things that we did here is using deduplication to be able to manage the amount of data being pushed across the WAN links. Client performance was a significant win for us. Going from 5X on their bigger systems that they drove into TSM, using the 6X client made a significant impact in how fast those backups were for a number of small files. Okay? DS3500 storage array with encryption was a very good solution set for that environment. And TSM 6.3s, we position them for TSM 6.3 for node replication. This is a huge win for us because we have multiple primary data centers that we're dealing with, and so being able to replicate this across is going to be of significant value to them. Yes, sir?
What was significant about taking the clients to 6 that you picked up the increase in throughput or speed? Was it dedupe that came into play?
Yeah, it was two things. The speed at which the server and the client negotiates what's changed, as well as the deduplication, the amount of data we're having to push across those links. That was significant for us. That deduplication, I've got another example for a hospital where it's even more of an impact. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. Any other questions? Okay. All right, communications system. This is TSM 6.1, even today. And the main reason is a 6.3 feature that's just released will help us move forward. The requirement was a very large landscape with active data requirements. Serviced by 410, 420 gigabyte TSM server databases. There were multiple Solaris systems driving that solution. Those Solaris servers were running pretty hot to get the workload done. Those are big systems. Those were tuned right just to make this thing drive. The expectation was to bring them to 300 gigabytes and then build another one, Well, we were able to spin them up to just slightly past 400 gigs and make them run well. That's hats off to the TSM 5X team. There were solid performance and operations, and I mean they could rely on it. It worked every day, so we didn't want to disrupt that. Wanted to continue leveraging tape because of the huge amount of files and huge amount of data that was involved. And the objective of this was to not only upgrade, but because we needed to future-proof this. In other words, we didn't want to get stuck in the we're on 5.4 or we're in 5.5 and now we're going to get pushed forward. We want to get ahead of this curve to be able to drive it forward, but also to consolidate these TSM server instances. One of our objectives, let's reduce costs for customers. Well, reducing costs means consolidating these TSM server instances. So for the solution, we decided, all right, and this is right as 6.1 releases, right before we did the tests, pre-release with 6.1, find out if we could actually drive this, because we've got a lot of DB2 experience across the team members, and decided, all right, we're going to push this thing and push it as hard as we can. TSM moving over to System P from Solaris using AX 6.1, SVC and XIV to be able to drive the I.O. requirements. This is a non-trivial database size and a non-trivial data volume. For us to be able to accomplish this, we had to make certain not only did we get it onto the right disk subsystem and the right disk configuration, but more importantly that in 2 years or in 3 years, if we needed to change disk subsystem, we could not just say, okay, let's start over. Or let's move this to another platform. We needed to do that transparently. SVC and what Ron's going to talk about next is the magic for doing that. And then continue to use the TS3500 tape library and 3592 investment. Okay? Solution impact. So this is back in 2009. Had some calls to make certain that IBM would support this when they called in, because we supported a 1 terabyte database at that point. We started up at first day, actually on the third day, at 2.4 terabytes to stand up. A single TSM server instance, I mean one instance handling all of the workload, dragging the data in, and the single system P system and their properly designed and laid out back-end disk system significantly reduced the costs. Maintenance costs, system acquisition costs, as well as the operational costs. Still able to get the same workload done in the 24-hour window. So sort of dabbling in the last section. Database and capacity performance enhancements made this possible. The administrative processing enhancements made it viable. 6.3's server and client communications performance for, we've got some of the file systems that were 48 million and 53 million files. To do some of the activities there on Solaris, which it's really difficult to do, we were able to get that done with the TSM clients. This is the key thing. This is why we have not upgraded this landscape from 6.1 to 6.2, is that 6.3 multi-stream database backup is the requirement for us to continue to grow this landscape at the pace that they want to grow it. And that's here now. So fabulous. And they also support 4 terabytes, so that's even better. So now we're really going to stack on this thing. The key to this, as was said earlier, and I've said a couple times, is a balanced design. I can't scale up this way if I just throw more disk. I've got to have the right memory, CPU, disk I/O, and network I/O to pull this off. Okay. 2 down, only 3 to go. You guys still awake?
Yep.
Okay, we're still awake. All right. Banking. We have a customer. Their primary location is out in Denver, Colorado. 2 locations. They have VMware infrastructure at most of their locations. For most of their systems, they are Windows, Linux, AIX, SQL Server, Unidata. We've got a TDP for that, right? Unidata, Exchange, and laptops. Okay? They have long-term retention requirements, and their primary objective was to improve the daily operations. And just so you know that they were a TSM 5X customer. Improve not only the daily operations, but also the DR response time. The response time of going from tape, setting up the TSM server, or restoring it, restoring the TSM server database, the time to readiness for the DR restores was too long for them. And so we wanted to figure this out and fix this. And additionally, as part of that, they wanted to eliminate tape. They were willing to make the investment to go with disk. In that context, we used TSM 6.2, and we used what we called the Starfire TSM HADR, which was, before IBM supported it, we implement HADR, and we also monitor and measure this for reporting current state management for high availability of these two TSM server instances. We do deduplication at the server and at the client, but it's primarily client-driven, especially for the AIX side. We've got the deduplicated database volume there is significantly smaller than it used to be. And then use System X servers for the TSM instances, and recycled their DS4700 storage arrays. So again, using commodity disks that they already had on the floor that they wanted to upgrade and change from, we use the 4700 for that storage. Okay. So impact. We eliminated tape. Everything went to disk, okay, including their old historical data, migrated everything. The DR instance is now instant ready with HADR. I can't recommend this highly enough. It literally eliminates DR prep costs and the time for the DR tests. And when I say eliminates it, I'll talk to it on another slide, but we've taken customers from 18 plus, 20 plus hours from, okay, we're here now, let's start the DR test, down to with this, it's, well, we say 15 minutes, but it's about 2 minutes to stand up the TSM instance and start running data. Okay. We solved the client performance issues on high file count systems. Again, another play for the TSM 6X client, 6.2 specifically clients. One system was 24 hours to less than 1 hour, and that's without journaling. Okay. Did not want to do journaling, did not want to take the pain of the rescan that journal has after a certain number of cycles. Okay. Offsiting activities were completed again with in-place bandwidth. They didn't have gigabits between the 2 data centers, so we need to be able to push this outside of banking hours, servicing still ATM traffic, but complete this outside of business hours in that window. And again, we wanted to be able to have the appliance model applied here in that the operations is fully automated, the reporting, the notification is integrated into the solution. Something to note is that, you probably never heard of this, deduplication was used. Oh my gosh, wake up, wake up, wake up. Yes, we use deduplication, shocker. So we use deduplication. The client performance, again, helped us a lot. The detailed disk design was required because initially we were going to use tape. We were actually still going to use tape due to confidence in the deduplication state. Customer simply wanted to still leverage disk. And so this is one of the examples where you have to be able to factor in not only CPU and memory impact to be able to do the database processing every night, but also the disk I/O requirements to be able to drive the data, rehydrate it, push it down to tape. That rehydration cycle can be very, very onerous. It needs to be factored in. HADR enables, I'm not sure, is anybody using HADR? Okay. HADR allows for real-time replication of the TSM DB2 database between System A and System B. So as transactions come in, play, they're streamed to the remote location. So that TSM database, the DB2 database underneath, is ready to rock and roll at a moment's notice. Okay? So we're able to literally start up that instance at the remote location ready to go. Okay? And then a web-based operations console, which is, go ahead, question?
Just could you elaborate a little bit on the third bullet item? How did you solve the client performance on a high file client?
Yep, that is literally the TSM 6.2 client relative to the TSM 5.4 client that they were using. We changed the configuration on the system itself. In other words, we use different TSM client options, but beyond that, it's really no magic. That was just the performance difference that we had from a TSM 5.4 system and a 5.4 client streaming that, and that was a Windows box that was the real pain on that one.
So this was on the backup or a restore?
That's backup.
Okay.
That's backup. So it wasn't a high volume of additional files, and they had gone down the path and gotten very burned by journal backup, improper configuration, improper use. Got burned by that, absolutely would not do that. And so what they were doing is they were backing up basically once every other day. Just something they wanted to avoid. And the TSM 6.2.2 client, in certain cases, just blows our doors off. In most cases, we're seeing 50, 100, 150% faster, but not for small files. Keep in mind, this is a small file discussion. If I've got a 300 gig file or a 1 terabyte file, it's the same beast in terms of throughput is what we're seeing. Yes, sir.
For those of us that still have the 5.5 TSM server, would a 6X client give you improved performance?
No, my understanding is that it is actually the changes in the protocol between the TSM client and the TSM server, so it does require a 6.2
Supposed to
server.
be at 6.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Healthcare. Okay. This one was very interesting. This is a mix of requiring both server and client side deduplication. Hadn't used deduplication ever before, right? A few people are awake. Okay. Healthcare. All right. Siegel Data Center. Only one data center. Their backup was tape off-site. They also used 3 other backup tools. Those didn't even go off-site. Okay. Windows, Linux, and AIX. AS400 still running one very important critical environment. OpenVMS, Domino, SQL, and Oracle in the environment. Okay. Slightly less than 200 servers, so not a big environment. Long-term retention requirements, it's a hospital. Significant data growth rate. They wanted to eliminate old, very slow tape, LTO2. A small TSM environment, like I said, additional backup products. And this is where we stepped in and said, we want to consolidate you guys to one backup product, and let's actually get everything off-site, and let's integrate this into one landscape. Okay? What we leveraged was TSM 6.2. I mean, literally when it came right out, that was when we were finishing the design as 6.1, transitioned to 6.2 early in 2010. We decided to use both server and client-side deduplication and work through that process with them. TSM, IBM System X servers and DS3000 was used for the appliance's primary site and a remote location.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Sorry.
No, go for it.
Back to the other slide. With regards to the IBM System X servers, were you using Windows or were you using Linux as the
Linux.
local? Linux?
Linux. In this case, this is specifically Red Hat Enterprise Linux 5.6 now. Do you want to use Windows?
No, I prefer to be in the Linux space.
I'm with you.
Okay.
First example, Linux. Second example, AIX. This one is Linux.
Okay.
Okay. We are, for our larger Intel workloads, that's the space we're playing. That's where we get the automation capabilities that we want. I mean, I could talk to you for about a half an hour.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. If there's a break between Ron and I, I'll even buy everybody coffee to talk about that. Okay. So good question. Thank you very much for that one. So what do we do? They had a TSM 5X environment, right? And it was beautiful. It was shiny. It was polished. It was rusty. It was broken down. It was not right. Okay. We re-implemented TSM from scratch. We migrated all the data. We literally did an export-import for all of the nodes. They didn't have that many nodes that were multi-terabyte nodes, so it was very doable to be able to say nodes 1 through 17 are moving today. We're going to export that data between their backup windows and resume backup on the new environment. We eliminated tape entirely. we placed a DR instance, the second appliance, at a remote regional facility, not a DR location. This is actually an active facility for them. The deduplicated data, and this is just interesting, 86%, 107 terabytes removed. And one of the things that they look at this is what their tape costs were going to be relative to LTO2. And tape loss, primary site, and 2 copies off-site, et cetera, and the times generated, et cetera. All of that has been evaporated. And 86%, and it just continues to ratchet up as we keep pushing data into this environment. Operational automation, again, automating everything we can for the customer landscape. And then here's one of my favorite metrics. When we spun this up, you notice how I was saying we migrated those nodes. Let's push their data over and let's continue the backups. In the process of doing that, from the day that we finished everything on 5.5 to the day that we started everything on 6.2, their backups were well over 11 hours on their normal days, okay? And we were noticeably under 2.5 hours. What we did was change to 6x and enable deduplication on the client side. Okay? Significant improvement for us. For them, they were ecstatic. Now, it was also a better implementation. It was a balanced server design, et cetera, leveraged disk, not tape. Although they did have enough for pure disk for the nightly ingestion volumes, but they were still taking well over 11 hours. So it's a very good success for us. Deduplication was critical to make that happen. Client-side performance, again, has helped us a lot to be able to complete those backups in a fast fashion. HADR is being implemented now for that remote location. That's a critical component for us for those quick stand-ups and let's rock and roll. Operation console, again, and client automation to automatically deploy clients to new systems without any of their engineering intervention. And the appliance model just made it very simple for them. They just run this stuff. It ingests the data, produces reports. They respond to backups that may have had skip files. Beyond that, it just runs. Okay. I think we're on to the very last one. Yes. Okay. Everybody still with me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so this is a larger customer, 3-site in the assurance industry. Primary data center only. They have a DR service provider. Out on the East Coast is their data center, or excuse me, is their DR service provider. They are currently, they were running TSM 5 on ZOS. They were 5.5, had just upgraded to 5.5 as we started working with them. Windows, Linux, AX, SQL, DB2, Domino, VMware, and blessed SharePoint. Long-term retention requirements, they wanted to eliminate tape. They wanted tape out of there. Their DR tests were killing them in terms of being able to stand up and run tape. Their fastest, I'm getting to the next slide. One moment, please. Painful DR events. The time at which everybody arrived, and it wasn't just 2 or 3 people, dozens and dozens of people arrived. Okay, we're ready for the test, and now we're going to wait 12, 18, 20, 22, 26 hours to be able to stand up the TSM instance and then start spinning that first byte of data to clients. Had to shrink that down. So what did we use in our solution? It was 6.2, TSM HADR, deduplication both server and client, TSM Sweep for unified recovery. I wanted them to stop thinking about how do I squirt this database data out, store it on the file system, try and pick it up and sweep it. I'll touch on that here in just a second. But unified recovery made it towards like, all right, now we can right-size this solution across the whole landscape, not try and figure out how to economize around PVUs. We now can just ingest the data and provide the right level of protection without having to go back to the well to say, hey, I need some more TSM for SAN licenses. Hey, I need some more. No, just go get that data and protect it the way it needs to be protected now. TSM System X, well, before I finish on that, as an example, we did some initial tests that basically shook them, saying, okay, your backups that you're currently pulling out, right into the file system from your database systems. We took a couple of their core production SQL servers, not very big databases. When it was written out to the file system, it was compressed as about a 58 gigabyte file. Night to night, we did multiple night tests on this with deduplication. That file, they shipped on the biggest night 157 megabytes. Deduplication really, really impacts those objects. And that was one of the questions where they're like, hey, this is good. Maybe we shouldn't even use the TDPs. It's like, okay, wait. So now you have to sweep the file. Now you have to manage the restore, et cetera, et cetera. Well, let's leverage the TDPs to enable the DBAs to manage this themselves and help enhance what they can do. Absolutely ran with it. Great. This is right-sizing not only the backup, because that's cool for backup, but nobody really cares about backup, right? It's only when I got to recover it that matters. So it helped us out a lot that way. Again, using System X and my current favorite, it is on my Christmas list. If anybody wants to mail my wife, please reinforce this. I would like a V7000 for Christmas. Absolutely enamored by that device, the way we're able to solve problems and provide functions and features to customers. Absolutely my favorite. So I will write her email address on my business card if you guys want that. So that's important. There's still enough time to get that order in. Storage V7000 SVC for DR test automation. I'll touch on that. But this is a critical piece right here. Okay, so solution impact. Eliminated tape. Wow, it made a lot of people very happy. Now they don't have to rent a portion of a 727 just to get tapes flown out to the East Coast. DR instance is, again, instance ready with HADR. We leverage HADR significantly. That's a good way to understate that. This is where their best case, again, we want to under-promise and over-deliver, right, is 12 hours, and we tell the business is that, hey, we'll have you back up in 15 minutes. And it doesn't even take that long. What we did is leverage SVC on the V7000 to provide that DR state and maintain production. So if you will, it was a 3-site deployment. Primary production data center. I'm going to go to the third site. The third site is just another TSM instance. Classic copy pooling out there to provide that third copy in case we have issues and we don't have tape that's mobile. We've got a third site to pull the data from. But then the second site is HADR replication for the TSM server database and dedupe state copy for the data to that remote location. At the time that they want to declare a test, okay, we're going to start the test next Tuesday. We're going to declare it 4:55 p.m. on Thursday. At 4:55, we essentially pause the landscape, snapshot it, flash copy on the V7000. This is all script automated. State it, and then we attach it all to a fourth system that's at the DR center. So now they can run and have a static state of pure on-disk deduplication of the remote location and still ingest production. Keep production rolling, run their tests, validate everything, and then come back. And oh, by the way, when they walk on site, it is about 120 seconds to start their DR test. So we're saying 15 minutes. Because we figure there's the chair settling time, there's the coffee placement time. So when you add all that up, it comes to about 12 to 15 minutes. Third site's classic. Offsetting activities are all deduplicated data to the remote locations. And we eliminated for them a large workload for the OS 390 environment, reducing a lot of system costs on the System 390. Okay. So what did we leverage is TSM 6 deduplication. Sort of a common theme here, right? The HADR, we couldn't live without HADR at this point. TSM client automation to quickly and consistently deploy those TSM clients, including the migration of current configurations when there's issues with services. The way that we respond to those on Windows machines is we literally just do a reinstall. Tears it all down, migrates all the settings, reinstalls it, sends it back up. And again, TSM 6.3, what's it going to do for us? They're a heavy VMware shop. They have hundreds and hundreds of machines in VMware. TSM for virtual environments is going to change their life, not only because we can back it up that way, but the vCenter plugin is going to provide their VMware guys the ability to access this data, those systems, and the recovery that they need without having to go elsewhere. That vCenter plugin is really, as far as I'm concerned, the magic for TSM VE. Node replication is going to give us more capabilities for that third site. And then, again, my favorite right now is the multi-stream database backup, because as we grow these databases, deduplication with very good deduplication rates will take the databases, like we've heard 2 times. We've seen 4 and 4.5 times the size of the source database once we enable deduplication if we have aggressive deduplication. So multi-stream database backup is extremely important for us to be able to move forward. And for the most part, we do all of our database backups directly to disk, as Chris was saying earlier. The performance that we get out of that relative to streaming to a tape device is significant. Okay, so second to last slide. The last slide has questions and a sort of a Q&A kind of quiz, so I hope you paid attention. Foundation of this success that we've had to date, partnering with IBM, is the TSM V6 value. There's not just a few things we can do, like backup. It really is the value of the entire portfolio that allows us to walk into that customer landscape and say, hey, so tell me your problems. And we can now right-size the right components to make their recovery and their protection happen at the right levels. The success of those solutions is only delivered through a balanced design. If we have something out of whack with 5X, it hurts us. If we have something out of whack in 6X, it's going to drill us into the ground. So get it right going out of the gate, and you're going to be in good shape. Get it wrong, and there's going to be some recovery you're going to have to work through. And this is system resources, CPU, memory, etc. The workloads, how those vary, and then the right features. Are we going to replicate? Are we going to use the database replication itself? How do we back up and manage the database? What's the I/O pattern? Don't just give me one big LUN. You know, one big LUN, ugly, ugly, ugly results. Deduplication and so on. I don't know if you guys have heard of deduplication. One of the things that we've had a very good success with customers is as we've upgraded from V5 to V6, it gives us the opportunity to really modernize the backup landscape. Let's not just do backups anymore. Let's not just talk about progressive incrementals. Let's really talk about the right level of protection for your systems. And so this is where that discussion of unified recovery, potential conversions to that licensing model, as well as the proper design makes that happen very cleanly and very effectively for customers. As well as the collapsing of TSM servers. We've got a customer right now that we're architecting. They currently have 20 TSM servers. We're looking at 3 when we're done. And this is a non-trivial customer. So very interesting what TSM6 allows us to do in the right system configuration. Our appliance model has accelerated our solution delivery time, so the time to actually stand up the TSM instances and to upgrade and manage those has been reduced. The key thing for us is it produces consistent results across the location, so leveraging a consistent deployment methodology and design methodology has helped us significantly. And it simplifies operations. Now we know how to manage these things at multiple locations. So what do I focus on? Service continuity. Okay? I want to control costs and manage data for customers. All right? And deliver on disaster recovery by unified data management. I don't want to plan for disaster recovery and build for that. I want to build for proper service continuity, and disaster recovery falls out of that. All right? So if we do this right up front, disaster recovery becomes a natural next step. And again, transform from operate to innovate. Let's make this stuff happen. Let's start providing services back to the business to extend the value of storage, not just getting our backups done. With that, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming.